Hello and welcome to episode 49 of JagaVision. Pretty excited about today. We have a white Peony that we're going to be drinking with the owner of Teacan over in Vancouver. JagaSilk doesn't carry white teas, so this will be a really great opportunity for us to learn a lot about it. Sister Speak will be joining us as well for the conversation. Generally, my guests join me at around 1:15, so looking forward to that. Been struggling a bit with the internet when we've been running these shows recently, but we did some digital improvements, did some tests over the past couple weeks. Took a break from having guests for a little bit there, except for the wonderful Sister Speak, who was gung ho about doing those tests with us. Worked out really well, so I feel pretty good about today. We're not broadcasting to Twitch today. We're just broadcasting to YouTube and Facebook, and then we're going to layer in Twitch next week. So we'll see how that goes. If you want to check out episodes, go to youtube.com/jagasilk, and you can check out previous episodes. I really encourage you to go through all of the archive shows. There's tons of interesting information. We've had some fantastic guests on the show. We've covered some really interesting themes. If you want to see what's happening next, you can always join us on our Jaga Spam. Go on to jagasilk.com and click to join the newsletter that we send out every couple weeks. It lets you know what shows are coming up, different recipe ideas, gives you some coupons, etc., for buying teas off of our webpage. Hopefully we can answer your questions if you also choose to join us in the chat room. So please make that happen. If you're watching us at 1 o'clock on a Thursday, we try to do these shows every single week. We've been pretty good about it. 1 p.m. on Thursdays. So yeah. Today, gonna start off the show. I wanted to see, since we're gonna be doing a white Peony by Teacan, I had a farmer send me a selection that I haven't actually had a chance to cup. So this isn't really fair to this tea, and it's only fair because of what we're gonna be drinking today. What I mean by it not being fair is that it's a 2020. Harvest season is essentially right now, especially for these early harvest teas, if not like a last month. So I have essentially some tea that's not in its best form. White teas are really delicate, so I'm sort of you could say that it's a little bit of a push to expect really vibrancy out of tea this far along in the year. But what it has going for it is I had not broken the seal. It's been stored in a cool, dark, dry place. So if it's going to last longer than a year, that's how you're going to make it last longer than a year. When we are bringing in our teas, we really try to take that into consideration. We try to only bring out a genre when we truly understand it. So for when we first started JagaSilk, we didn't have even any crimson teas, or what are more commonly known as black teas in North America. So let's see what I can do here. Just gonna get this in here. Look at that. Always an interesting game to try and get the big leaves into the tiny pots. There we go. All right. So I'm weighing out 6 grams. I'm going to do a little less than 6 ounces. My general brewing parameters that I've been doing for white teas has been 2 minutes, 1 gram for every 30 mils, and I've been doing these 80 degrees centigrade extractions. I find that 90 is going to burn the tea, bring out a lot of floral flavor compounds, which are interesting, but burning away that soft umami that really makes a white tea shine. White teas are super lightweight, so it's really easy for them to float on the surface of the pot. Really using a lot of leaf and fully filling the pot is a great idea. I imagine that when we make this tea with Claudia over at Teacan, we're probably going to get encouraged to use a smaller teapot, something more in the 90 to 120 milliliter range, and that we're probably going to use boiling water for short infusions and do Gong Fu Cha style. but honestly, I don't know. So we'll see what she has to say when she joins us. Why don't we bring in more teas is a question we often get asked. When you go into a lot of tea shops, you have quite a list. It's like going into a wine shop and having all these different wines. The nice thing about wine is that oftentimes, not always, your bottles are just going to get more valuable the longer you keep them around. So if you bring in a whole bunch of a really expensive wine and it hangs out in your cellar for a number of years, that's okay. But with teas, especially if they're not your ancient teas, or they're not your dark teas or your pu'ers, etc., they're generally going to oxidize and they're not going to taste that good once they've sort of been harvested and stored properly for about a year, maybe maxing out at 18 months. Some would argue that, especially with white teas and with green teas, especially more delicate green teas, that oxidation happens even faster, in the realm of 8 months. There's different opinions. We find with Japanese greens that we're sitting at around the 15-month mark. But yeah, it does depend. But that's just personal preference. We know that some folks say that you're not going to get much after 6 months, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch. A lot of Japanese farmers seem to feel that their teas taste better if you let them rest for a bit. So they're harvested, and then there's like this 3-month resting period, and they're only really gonna start moving product for a particular year in the fall of the year that it was harvested. So you'd harvest late spring, early summer in Japan, and you'd be drinking your teas after they'd rested more in the fall. There is a style called Shinja, which is a lighter firing of the leaves, and you do get a more delicate leaf, more vegetal flavor. It seems to oxidize faster when you haven't fixed the flavors into the leaves as strongly as when you later in the year increase your firing temperatures. So this white tea smells like honey. Smells amazing, actually. That's really good. I really regret that I haven't tried this tea before. I get pretty set on my genres. We didn't do oolongs for a really long time. We didn't do crimson teas for a really long time. We really try to do a lot of research. We've only been at this. JagaVision is 16 years old, and the industry is filled with people whose families have been operating tea shops for hundreds of years sometimes, and you get these multi-generational endeavors. When interacting with those folks, I feel so young and uninformed, and I feel like I could spend my entire life learning new teas every single year, and I would not be able to really understand the breadth of what's out there. And that's kind of another reason why we limit our selection. So we cup a lot of tea. We get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tea samples from various farmers that we interact with. Of course, the flavor is really important to us. So we do blind cup, and then we decide teas that we're like, this is a tea that has a lot of potential. And then when we get to the next stage, we reach out to the farmer, and we just make sure that they can do things like provide batch numbers, so that we're getting the tea that we liked with our next shipment, not just a tea that they think is similar, or a batch that they think is similar. And if it is not the same batch, we just want them to be upfront about it. Another thing that we want to know is more interesting. We need to know harvest dates for sure, but we also like to know who harvested it. If you're a bigger farm, we like to know if there's a garden manager. If it's a bigger farm, we need to have very careful stewardship of the land. So we put a lot of value in careful harvesting practices and sustainability on a really real level, not just saying it. And we believe that's only possible truly if we visit the farmers and we have like conversations with them, and in some situations we even harvest with them. And I find that process just builds so much trust. And really deepens the relationships that we value so much. So it begins with this sort of samples, and it's almost like the the doorway, and then when you want to actually go through that doorway, it's going to be that decision will be made based off of the data that's possible to be gleaned. Oh, that's a lovely tea. So just very striking the honey flavor that I'm getting in this tea. There's a slightly watery finish, but I think that's more my brewing technique. I don't think that this tea has, I mean, unless that watery finish is a result of the umami sort of getting displaced or sort of fading. But it feels like a really buoyant tea. So yeah, I'd be surprised if a specialist in white teas told me that this tea is oxidized. I would be more likely to assume that they're going to tell me to make it a little different. Yeah, I'm really into that. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to see if I can't get our guest to join us. So I know we have Sister Speak is going to join us. We also are going to be joined by T-Can. So let's see if we can't make that happen. Oops. Apparently I can't spell. Okay, hello. Oh,
Hi.
hey, is that Claudia? Hi there. Just 1 second, Claudia. I just need to switch the audio over so that my audience can hear you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very, very good. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah, there seems to be an issue with the default settings on my computer.
Okay.
Just give me a moment. Okay, and let's go with this one, USB PMP. So let's just hope that I haven't turned off the volume. You want to try speaking again there, Claudia? I can hear you, but they can't hear you. So let me see. No, it's totally settings on my end. You're all good. Just give me another quick moment. I'm just gonna put the show on pause for a second, okay? So be right back.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Yes. Hi.
And they can hear me now too. Okay, so I'm gonna come back, and here we are. Here's Claudia, and welcome to JagaVision.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Good seeing you.
yeah. It's been I think the last time we had tea together. I was in a
Tea coma.
I think I was on my 30th cup of tea. It was
Oh.
pretty intense, and it was an amazing experience. For the viewers who are watching, Claudia is the owner, right, of T-Can?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the owner of T-Can in Vancouver. We had a lovely conversation during the Victoria Tea Festival revival. That was a 24-hour live stream that we did so that we could stay COVID careful, but still bring in the tea community to participate in sort of a glorified tea symposium. So every year we always do this educational component to the tea festival. We call it the tea symposium. And so we've always felt that if we have to, we would always, bring everything back to its core and host it that way. And I'm the co-director of the International Tea Appreciation Society, and Jaga Silk has always been a part of the tea festival in its when it was run by Camosun College, and in the revival we've been really involved in that process. And we bring in merchants from all over. The society brings in merchants from all over Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest. And Tikan, that was our first time interacting though, so I had just such a memorable time. And you sent me this lovely package of white peony, and I was
Yeah,
like,
this
oh,
last time we didn't have enough time to send through some tea. So this time I'm happy to actually taste the same tea with you.
right, okay, yeah. So our audience is saying that they can't hear you. Can you guys? I'm so sorry, Claudia. I can see you being projected into my stream, so I hopefully my audience, if you can just send in the chat, Steven Chesser, if you could confirm that you can hear, that would be amazing. We're
Yeah, you hear me?
from my side, it looks like I can hear you. So it looks.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
hear
can
you
hear
too.
both of you now. Wonderful. Thank you, Steven. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, so fantastic. I couldn't quite hear you at the time, but I'm glad that everybody can hear you now. So, okay.
Yay.
So white peony. You might not know this, but Jaga Silk, we are matcha specialists. So my wife and we visit farms in Japan. We develop very I think close relationships with the farmers. We've even harvested with them. We've helped them put the mats over the tea fields and done like 3 days of like covering tea plants, and we've had a lot of fun. And for the first 5 years in 2005 until 2010, all we did was matcha. And then from 2010 onwards, we started to do loose teas, but only a very small amount, and it was more of a complement to our matcha program. But I am personally quite a tea enthusiast. I love to drink different flavors. Honestly, I love coffees and wines and cheeses, and I just love it when people are really into what they're creating, right? But white teas have always been something that I'm interested in. I've never had it as one of my official genres. So Jaga Silk has like a rotating genre. So I have a green tea, I have a oolong, I have a crimson tea, or what would be called a black tea in North America, and I have an herbal tea. And when we started, we only had green teas and herbal teas. And so it's been this slow sort of like, and we sort of played with the idea that it would be really cool to do a dark tea or like a pu'er, right? But we've also played with the idea how cool it would be to do a white tea. But I don't know enough about it. I really want to understand it a little bit more. So white peony, I understand there's Baimudan and there's Yinzen, or like, I don't know, I get all these, there seems to be like three major white teas out there, or like branches. Maybe you want to talk to me about it. Like what is white peony? And why did you choose this white peony for Tikan? Two different questions.
Well, okay, sure. Well, you're actually right, Jared. When you say you don't know anything about white tea, I don't think so. So you're right. There are 3 classifications. So
Okay.
it's basically depends on. So there's the Yinzhen, the silver needle you mentioned, which is just the bud only,
Okay.
which is the most priced one, most expensive one. This
Yinsen.
one is we consider the second grade white peony, the Baimudan, which is the bud and 1 to 2 leaves.
Okay.
So, and also because of that shape, that's why it get the name of white peony as well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the third one would be the bud and up to 3 to 4 leaves, which is the shoming, which is like people always say, oh, the super needle is the best because it's the tender bud. But to me, I would say the reason why we pick this white peony because it's more okay, maybe backtrack a little. For T-Can, we started it, so all we sell is just one product at a time.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes, we call the tea exploration kit, and in that kit we have 5 teas. So every 3 to 4 months, depends whether we are able to source the right tea, we'll launch one kit. And people have to buy that kit, and they have to buy that 5 tea. So our idea is to kind of force people to get out of their comfort zone, maybe force you to get out of your matcha heaven so that you will try.
You know, we do the same thing with our wholesale customers. We say green tea and crimson tea, but we don't tell you what we're gonna send you. We just it's a genre. So it's just like they decide they want to get Jaga Silk green tea. Well, sometimes it's a Fukamushi Sencha. Sometimes it's a Yunwu, like a Lushan Yunwu. Sometimes it's it's a Enshiu Lu. You know, like we kind of switch it up and we do a rotation. So that's really, I totally agree with that process because like I think people go into a comfortable place where they're like, okay, I love crimson tea from Darjeeling, and that's all I'm gonna have. And then they buy the equipment, and they kind of get stuck on one estate. But maybe they might not know that the person that's making that tea changes, and that the rainfall is different from year to year, and it's gonna change. And the way the water that they're working with is going to have an impact on the tea that they're drinking. So even if they think they're not changing things, they are. It's just happening, and they have no real control over it in a lot of ways, right? So it's kind of nice to just be like, hey, like it's changing anyways. So why don't you jump on the roller coaster ride? And that's a really cool system at Tecan. So you do 5 teas, and I kind of want to sign up. How does somebody sign up for the Tecan box?
Right now we don't do a subscription base.
Okay.
One is we don't want to say, okay, I have to commit every 2 months. We have to launch a kit, because we kind of wanted people to be able to take their time to enjoy it.
Right.
We don't want them to rush through, and also we want to make sure that we find the right tea. So
fair. Every
3 to 4 months. So, but if you want to know when, subscribe to our mailing list.
Okay, cool. And you'll put out like a message, hey, we're ready. So the white peony is one that you had. I would assume that it's not a current one. This is a 2020, so this is one that was in the past. Like, is this?
It's the last kit. Right now we are selling the third edition, and so this is actually in the previous one.
Okay.
That's not available. So, and the interesting thing is, because our tea, our kit is actually on consignment with Whisk Matcha.
Okay. Yeah.
And she's also at her cafe. She's serving this tea, which is also an interesting experience as well, because we will be able to find out which tea that people order most. And it turns out this white peony is the most popular among that 5 tea choices. So I was like quite surprised, because in a way white tea is not that common. So I'm surprised that people are like going back to it. And I think it has a lot to do with this their superstar cashier and Casey. She loves this, so I think maybe when people kind of wanted some recommendation, we'll recommend this. And it's a quite easy tea to drink. I would say if you get into white tea, white peony definitely is the one to go into. The reason is because Silverino is sweet and delicate, but sometimes people have a hard, if you're used to matcha with a lot of umami or black tea that's very robust.
Yeah, because
it could be a little bit light.
I often try to like really like put in stuff the pot, a little tiny pot with lots of white tea leaves, and then I do 1 gram for every 30 mils. I'm very empirical, right? I like to weigh everything, and then I have my temperature at 80. I do a 2-minute extraction, and I just go like all in, and I get this kind of nice syrupy. I actually made a white peony, not yours. This is one that was sent to me from a different farmer, It's kind of interesting. I'm actually curious what your thoughts are. Visually, obviously, you can't tell a whole lot without actually having it in front of you and tasting it and all that stuff. But this is the white peony that he sent me. You see that?
Okay. What year is this?
This is 2020.
Year? Okay.
So it's the same year, and then that's I've weighed out yours in my left hand here. And I thought it was really interesting, because I was able to just go like, okay, before my guests join me, I always try a tea that I've never had before, and I feel really bad about this, but I had not opened this sample, so I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna drink this tea, and then it'll give me sort of like a pathway into the white peony that you sent me, and then I brewed it. I brewed it in a kyusu, so that's not really. It's a Japanese teapot, which is kind of weird, I guess, but I enjoyed it, and it's a very dense teapot. And it is, the clay is probably playing a role here, but I found it like to taste like honey. It was I feel like what I was drinking looks like it's been more aggressively withered than what you have. I see a darker, I think before they did the kill green process, it just looks to me like they just let the enzyme work its magic a little bit longer. So I don't know though. Like I'm really interested. I imagine that what I'm going to drink of yours is going to have, visually, it looks like yours is going to have more umami. It looks like it's going to have perhaps a little bit more of a vegetal flavor and less of a cooked sugar flavor. I'm just I don't know though. I'm really excited though. Oh, and before she, go ahead.
Yeah, I can't wait, because I think it's interesting that you're tasting the same tea but from different vendor. Because
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of people just kind of assume, oh, like Darjeeling just tastes like Darjeeling, but
Right.
it's like from different estate, from different season, it can taste so different. So I actually want to
Exactly.
know whether they're similar or different.
Yeah, totally. If I had been thinking, I would have sent you some too. It would have been kind of cool, right? To do. No, what I
Exactly.
did do is I did send some to my other guest who always joins me every week. Sister Speak Music. She's the lead singer of a very fantastic band. She's great for joining us. She plays a role. Sherri is her name. She plays a role similar to when we were doing the Tea Festival. We had Ryan Moen on. He's also a director of the Tea Festival. He's more of a community activist, healer, and he was able to sort of ask questions that maybe people that are not in the industry will ask. And so Sherri is really great for that. She comes on the show and she's always asking my guests and myself questions for clarification that help to make things a little bit perhaps if you're not in the industry, it's a way to sort of make it more understandable. So she's a little bit late coming out of her show. I'm just gonna try and invite her one more time. But yeah, I'm very interested in the comparison here. I think it'll be really really cool. But how do you choose your white peony? Obviously, there's lots of different white peonies you could get. What made you choose this particular selection? Is it a relationship? Is it a flavor? Is it both?
It's it's a bit of both, and definitely it's because when we curate our tea kit, we taste a lot of tea. We just go through. We don't have a set like a theme or tea that we want to go for. We actually taste a bunch of tea and then kind of narrow it down to the five.
Right.
So and then we've tried to put our personal preference because my partner and I have quite different preference. So there's a lot of debate and which is like healthy debate, so that we don't kind of just gear towards our own personal preference because sometimes there's tea in the tea that one of us don't like, but
Right.
because we are able to kind of like talk the other one person over why we should include this. And the interesting part is it's always we find out after you taste it more, it
Yeah.
will grow on you, and then you have new perspective. And because for the kit, after we sell a kit to our wonderful customers, we do a lot of private tea tasting with them.
Oh,
And
interesting.
from yeah, so from that tea tasting, I would say that we also learn a lot because everybody's taste is very different. I can't say I know everything about this tea because people can pick up little different nuances. So
Totally.
it's
Different
very
palettes.
interesting.
Different
Yeah, and then
water,
when we
different experiences.
exactly,
Yeah.
and when like with their food exposure as well, something that connects to them. So I
Yeah.
think it's a very interesting. Yeah. So let's see
What?
what's gonna connect with you.
Yeah. No, I'm super interested. I'm kind of stalling because I wanna start making this when Sister Speak joins us.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give her just let's say 3 more minutes here.
And
And
also, I want to mention because you mentioned about kill green just now.
yeah.
Just want to clarify that for white tea, they don't do kill green. They don't have killed this part.
Uh
It's
huh.
just basically two steps.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
they will, yeah, wither the tea and then they will dry it. But
So
there's no, yeah. So because kill green is kind of like a higher temperature,
yeah.
they will just dry it. So it's very minimal processing. That's why the tea needs to be of high quality to be able because there's no process to kind of salvage it. You can roast it to enhance it, so it's a very tricky tea to produce.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I've been really enjoying the this whole finish firing process and understanding when a tea is ready and the whole concept of kill green. And so it's interesting to me that white teas you're saying are not. I was always under, I guess, the false impression that about 10 to 20% moisture loss was when the fixing process happened with white teas. So what's the difference? I understand that a crimson tea is essentially they do the kill green process really late in the game, and then white teas I've been under the impression that you do a you kind of it's a very under manipulated tea, like very little sort of rolling is happening, very little everything, and that you kind of get this situation where you're tasting something pretty close to a natural state. Um,
Yes.
but I'm surprised that there's not a fixing process. How do they stop the enzyme? It's just like, I guess when it gets to 4% moisture loss, it's just the enzyme dies at that point. How long does this process normally take? And I guess how aggressive they are with the drying makes a difference in the flavor.
Yeah, it also depends, because a lot of the time they actually wither it under with the sun. So it really depends. And during the withering is where the kind of the oxidation, where it develops the flavor. And then they will stop at when they try to.
Okay.
So like you said, it's very minimal. Even though it's minimal steps, but it's actually very tricky. It depends on the tea leaves, on the experience of the tea producer. So it's a very, yeah, you can almost taste it. That's why the white tea is kind of quite different from a lot of the other tea groups, because you can almost taste. Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
For our audience, Claudia, of course, we just introduced, is from Tecan. Sherri is from Sister Speak Music. She joins us weekly. Claudia, Sherri was just on her. She does a live stream before JagaVision every Thursday. She's performing on her. She does a live performance on her Patreon. So those watching can go to patreon.com/sisterspeak and catch her there. She also does Facebook and Instagram when she can. So yeah, happy to have you joining us. Did you get the tea? I couriered it to you.
I sure did.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
So that is a gift from Claudia. She sent it over after the. So we're gonna be drinking the one that has handwritten on it that says White Peony. That's the.
Ooh, I got my whole kit here of all the things.
Awesome.
I also can barely see because it's so bright. So I have this. I'm representing Blockstar today.
Nice. Okay.
Field hockey. Shout out.
Amazing.
Blockstar.
You're like a walking commercial. That's hilarious. Okay, so so Claudia was just explaining a little bit about white teas. I just learned something now. I've always been under the impression that white teas are fixed. You know how I talk about Kilgreen, Sherri in previous episodes? We talk about how you control the withering process and you got it, Claudia. When Sherri was starting making tea with us, she was like spilling stuff and knocking over things, and she's such a pro now. She's just like weighing and careful, and she's got like the whole like system going. It's pretty rad. So it's been a joy to watch this process. But anyway, she was just explaining how white teas, different from what I've always been teaching and what I've read, is that they don't go through that process called Kilgreen. The way that the propyl oxidase enzyme is managed is via the drying process, period, with the slow drying process.
The drying is kind of like Kilgreen, but it's definitely more gentle, and that's it. They don't, after that, they don't do more of the rubbing, rolling. So it's just
right. It's just right straight up. So different rooms, different like drying rooms are obviously going to have different aggressive temperature levels and moisture levels. Like really dry rooms with like hot temperature are going to make a big difference in the flavor, right? Okay, cool. So since Sister Speak is here now, maybe we can start making this tea and talk about it as we go. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you guide us through, Claudia? How should we make this? We have, I have little teapots. I have a Gaiwan. I have my water. Gaiwan? Okay, all right, let's see if I can.
Gaiwan would be nice. And for this tea, we actually use 90-degree temperature water, but we only brew it for 10 seconds. We don't do it long. Because with white tea, there's many different camps. I would say, like some people say, oh, you have to brew it at 80 degrees temperature water because it's such a delicate tea. Some people actually say, oh, because it has the bud, which is the toughest part of the plant, you actually need to use boiling water. So there are two camps. So I'm kind of in the middle of the road here.
What do you you say? What temperature again?
At 90-degree temperature.
90. Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. I use maybe 5 grams for 100 milliliter water.
That's exactly what I sent you, Sherri. You don't even have to weigh it. That's 5 grams right there.
Wow. And how much water? Sorry.
100 mils. So it's going to be very little water. So you need a very tiny. So I'm going to go get my little guy one. I'll be right back.
Let's see.
Sherri, and what's your favorite tea now after drinking so many?
It kind of rotates. Right now, actually, traditionally, white tea is one of my favorites of all time.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
What kind of white tea? Any
Well,
kind?
I'm actually still learning about white tea. I have the least knowledge about white tea of any of the teas, yet like typically like when I have a white tea, I just fall in love.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
my
Because it's
I don't seem to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I just interrupted you. My bad.
you go ahead.
I just just wondering if I can use a different teapot. Would this be okay if it's not a Gaiwan?
Yeah, anything is fine. We're at TCAM. We are not like very strict tea master that you have to have that tea equipment. Just use whatever you have on hand, and we always believe it's really the experience that counts.
Or this might be closest to a Gaiwan. It's glass, so then there's no clay impacting the flavor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, cool. I'll do glass then. I've always told our viewers that if they don't have a temperature variable kettle at home, that they can always use the vessel transfer system. So boiling water is 100 degrees, and if you want 90, then you would just pour that boiling water into a room temperature cup, and it would get you the temperature that you want. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I got my kettle. Am I rinsing this tea at all, or am I just should I preheat the teapot?
Straight up.
Straight up. Okay.
Preheat the teapot, and then because I was just doing it, I heat up my teapot and then put the tea leaves in, and then you can already smell. I'm not saying I want to hear what you guys are smelling.
Yeah.
Would
Okay.
you-
So
what size would you recommend of brewing? I have
Probably a
3 different.
small, because we're only doing 100 ml. Yeah.
that little tiny
Okay.
jar. That's a great idea.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm gonna put the tea leaves into my little pot here. And you said 100 mils, so this is gonna be fun. All right. And then, is there a brew time that you recommend, or do you just like to play it by
10
feel?
seconds.
10 seconds.
Yeah,
Amazing.
quick.
Okay.
I like to do it quick.
All right. So 100 mils for 10 seconds. I'm on it. So, do you start the timer, or do you use a timer?
I don't. I kind of go by
By feel?
because our timing is really for guidance, and I don't feel like you have to stick to it for 10 seconds.
Because it takes 10 seconds to fill the pot. so, okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I always do. You're doing 1 gram for every 20 mils, it sounds like. And then I'm doing 1 gram for every 30 mils normally. And I do 80 degrees centigrade for 2 minutes for my white teas. So I'm really interested in this.
Different way of brewing definitely will bring out different flavor as well. And this is definitely not the only way of brewing white peony, as you're done differently. But it's just that after we test different like ratio and temperature and time, we feel like this is more because I guess for TCAM we are aiming for people who might not be familiar with the tea, so we want it to be more easy to try instead of like really strong and pungent or astringent. So I think this is, but it might be too light for you if you're like used to brewing a white. So I would like to see what you say. So
That's really interesting.
for my flow, it's already
It's kind of spicy. I got some spice. It tastes like there's some chili pepper.
Chili pepper.
Yeah, and then I got just a hint of it, eh? And then I'm tasting honey again, and there's something vegetal in there that's really, really interesting.
Oh, I love this. I can smell it. It reminds me. This is what I always drink. I don't know what kind of white tea I drink, but I drink various white teas when I'm doing homework.
Oh, that's
That's good. It's actually a lot, like very high in caffeine, even though it looks very innocent, the color.
yeah.
Mm.
You're gonna scare her. She's very afraid of caffeine.
Oh, with this short
Well,
ribs,
I'm very sensitive to it.
I mean that
Okay.
sensitive, not scared of. She's yeah. I shouldn't speak for you sister speak.
Yeah, I didn't pick up the chili. It's interesting, but I definitely pick up the sweet, also the vegetable.
They're like a shishito pepper.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Wow.
And I think
This
it's
is
quite it's quite a like a perfect tea for spring. That's also the reason why I sent this one to you.
Why do I keep thinking of
Because-
peppers?
Wow.
Green peppers now I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Are you hungry?
Maybe. Hey, like I don't even know. I just had lunch. It smells really good. So you choose these teas for people that are getting into, what is your? Because obviously every tea company is going to have their own sort of target market where they want to have introductory teas. They want to have maybe something that's a little bit more advanced. I seem to remember from our conversation that you wanted people to think about tea a little differently. You wanted them to say like, hey, I can have a specialty tea and I can treat it more like enjoying a glass of wine. That's the perspective that you're continuing with? That's really
Yes.
cool. This would be
Because
really
for
nice in
every-
a
Yeah, because for every tea we include the background, the brewing the area, the backstory, so that people not just learn about the taste, they learn about the history, and that's I feel like that's kind of what makes it even more interesting.
Yeah, no, so if you were going to talk about this tea, what is our story here? Like, where there's lots of white peonies out there. This is from I imagine a particular region and
This is from Fudan,
Okay.
Fuding, which is I guess in Fujian, which is one of there are two famous districts for white tea in China, which is they are both in Fujian, which is the east side of China. This one is from Fuding, the other one is Zhenghe. There's always a debate which is the best. Like Fuding, oh, I'm the best, but I would say their two profiles is quite different. Fuding is definitely something I personally feel like it's easier to grasp the taste, but both of them are very good.
I believe
And
that.
the reason we picked this is because we didn't go for a silver needle. One is we feel like the taste is harder to pick up definitely, and also it's really expensive, and we don't feel like you always have to go for the top grade to enjoy a tea.
I often
actually
like the second best. I don't know what it is about me, but I'll get samples from different farmers, and I almost always I love the second best. And the first best will be like, maybe I'm just brewing it incorrectly, and maybe the second best is just fitting my brewing parameters a little bit better. I also find that the first time I have a tea is generally the most unpleasant version of it. Like you learn a tea over time, right? You learn a tea over time, and you adjust your brewing parameters to pull out flavors that you enjoy. Brew it a little longer or a little shorter or a little hotter or a little cooler or a little more tea or a little less tea or whatever you want to do. But I feel like the first one is always this guessing game. Like, I hope this is gonna work. And,
Yeah.
and I'm
I'm
not.
glad you keep going back even though you didn't like it.
There's what brings me back is when I smell the cup and I can smell the oils off of the tea when I'm done drinking, and then if it smells amazing, I feel that if it didn't taste amazing, then I just needed to do something differently, and then I could pull out more of what that tea has to say.
Yeah.
If it's too sandy on my tongue, probably I over extracted it with too long of an extraction. If it's too watery, then maybe it was the reverse problem, right? So for me, this is very light, but it's not like watery light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I always like for this type of brewing, I often find it's actually the second and the third brew that you can get more of the taste. But I don't do the rinse is because I feel like the first one for this particular tea you can already like you picked up the pepper that might be lost on the second brew. So I would be interested to find out what.
See what does my water do to it, right? Yeah.
Sherri, what do you think about this tea? Like, what flavor are you picking up? Did you have any pepper?
Yeah, I actually I tasted a combination of spicy pear.
Oh,
Okay. Spicy.
pear.
That's kind of cool.
Interesting.
I don't know if that really exists. You know what? Have you ever had one of my favorite dishes in California It's like a Mexican dish is a fruit bowl, and they put a little bit of chili on it and different spices with fruit,
Okay.
and it's one of my favorite things to eat in the whole world. And so this is bringing me to that memory with a little bit of like a pear with a tiny bit of just enough like lime and pepper.
Well, that's really interesting. Huh.
Mm.
I
It's also reminding me of getting in the zone for homework stuff.
You're ready to study, ready to go for it. That's awesome. I went ahead and did a second steep. I hope that wasn't the wrong thing to do here. I just kind of brewed it like for 15 seconds instead of 10. Should I have just done the same parameters over again? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. We're very yeah.
Since it's a wine theme, I chose my whiskey glass here, so I'm excited for this. What I have learned about white teas for me is that I try to find, and I wish I'd found the Gaiwan, because I believe this to be so important with the white teas. They're so lightweight that they end up floating on the surface a little bit. So being able to fill the teapot right up by using like 100 milliliter teapot or 100, like a really tiny teapot that you can really fill right to the top and get the lid on tight. It seems to do a lot for extracting the more complex tea oils. It's less of an issue the further you get in, like second, third steeps. The leaves get a little bit more saturated. They fall into the extraction a little bit easier, and it seems to be okay. But for that first infusion to really make that pop, I feel like a full-on tiny teapot as possible. It seems to be really beneficial. Hey.
I never, because all my teapot is quite small. So I never knew there's.
That's because you're cool.
No, it's just that I don't need to share. I can just, like, I like to do like small portions just for myself.
Oh, nice.
If you have a big
She's
teapot, it's fine.
the selfish tea drinker. That's awesome.
I definitely like to push it like smaller teapot, more leaves, and then just.
Yeah, right. It makes a big difference. You just get more syrupy textures out. I'm really enjoying this, Claudia. This is a noticeably higher quality extract than what I was drinking earlier. So I don't know if it's how you stored it or how I don't know if it was the choice, but like you've mentioned like why you would choose a particular, white peony over yin zin. It was more of you were like, hey, I don't think I need to go there in terms of that exorbitant cost. But again, there's so many different farmers producing so many different white peonies. Some people think that if you want to get a true white tea, it has to be from a particular tree. Otherwise, it's not real white peony. Curious what your thoughts are on that. Also, what cultivar is this tea? Is this a newer style? Like, is the cultivar that this tea was produced from more of a newer style, or is this like a more classic tea cultivar that was used?
Definitely more a classic. I forgot which cultivar, but this is more of a classic one. And
okay.
For newer cultivar, I think you should try. I should send you, because for our latest hit, the volume 3, we have this one called Moonlight White.
Okay.
It's a white tea, but it's from Yunnan.
Oh, interesting.
Which is predominantly producing, like a poor producing district. But Moonlight White is something that it's been gaining a lot of traction because they're using the big leaf varietal from the poor tree, so you actually get a lot more of the mouthfeel and the flavor, and so that one is another interesting to try. So, but this one we're trying is more of like a traditional one,
right?
So that you are able to, because we try to balance it a little bit. Sometimes we have tea that's more innovating, maybe like I said, the Moonlight White. Also, we have another called Tian Hong, which is the Yunnan red tea, which is also a very tea that's been gaining a little bit of traction in recent years. So, but we also like to go back to something that's more traditional. So this one you have is more traditional.
This is a more traditional. So it has like the feathery. I noticed that like it looked like it was kind of pretty authentic, which was cool. And
Thank
not
you.
not that there's anything wrong with it, inauthentic, like I love it when people like sometimes I get a longjing that's not from Zhejiang, so it's not really a longjing, but I don't know, like I'm okay with drinking sparkling wine that's not from Champagne, France. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So like
Yes.
now that being said, they're probably gonna have some pretty amazing champagne in Champagne, So I get that that's also really cool to like go in and explore that authentic cultural experience. With Longjing though, like I think it's I love this term they use called anti-fake, and it's just it's saying this is not from Zhejiang. This is not a true Longjing, but it's made in the style of Longjing. So it's and that's kind of cool. And so white teas, it seems to be that white teas are the tea that a lot of production regions start playing with. Like one of my earliest white teas I had outside of Fujian was from Sri Lanka, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And it was at a really high elevation estate called the Pedro Estate, and I had some teas from them that one of my friends who's Sri Lankan, he brought it back with him when he'd gone on a visit, and he'd got his hands on. They'd only produced 5 kilograms the entire year, and of this particular type, and it was like, okay, so very limited supply, which is kind of cool. But I remember just drinking it and going, wow, this is really interesting. And it was made with the local tea cultivar, so very different. And then another place that we work with uses white tea cultivars, one called Toklai, that's meant for white tea production. But they grew the white tea sort of like for the purpose of producing white teas, but it didn't work. But what it did make was beautiful oolongs. So it was so random. They're using traditional white tea cuttings.
Yeah, that's actually the beauty of tea. It's so unpredictable. There's no set formula. You thought this would work, but really it might not. Like you, we don't stick with traditional. We say, oh, no, we only go for the authentic. These are fakes. We don't.
Right.
Like, we actually like to try out regions that's outside of the original place that producing that certain type of tea, because there's definitely got to be something,
Right.
a reason why they're doing it, right?
Totally.
So we always like to explore. We don't say, okay, we only have tea because from this region because it's the like holy grail of white tea. So
Yeah. Like case in point, we actually we get an oolong from Fujian. And of course, Fujian is famous for its oolongs. It's considered the kind of like the birthplace of, or the creators of oolongs. And but what's interesting is that they're growing a Taiwanese cultivar because Taiwan has taken oolongs and taken them in such an interesting direction that's received a lot of positive responses around the world. And so this tea farmer who opened up a new estate, he actually imported some tea cultivars from Taiwan to grow in Fujian to make oolongs. It's quite.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, because Taiwanese tea, it's people actually took the tea plants from Fujian and then
Right?
planted it in Taiwan, but they kind of hybrid it with the local, the indigenous plant. So I think that's an interesting take to put back.
Like a reverse import, and have that conversation where you sort of like follow it's interesting how the tea plants move with human history and transform and change and become such an interesting like it's so fascinating, I guess, how that parallels. So the second steep that I had here, I made it a little bit too strong, which is interesting because I was like, oh, I want this stronger, and then so
Is it strong enough now?
I made it too strong, so I'm gonna be a little bit more careful this time, and I'm going to.
I did that too. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sherri-Ann.
Oh, I just noticed that I used a larger strainer than usual,
Mm-hmm.
and it allowed for a couple tiny leaves to pass through. And it's interesting because when I first steeped it for the 10 seconds, it wasn't quite strong enough. And I think I steeped it for more like 5 seconds because I got nervous about oversteeping. And then, but then as you've been sharing this lovely information, those tiny leaves seem to have steeped. They're very tiny particles. and now it's the perfect steep, and it reminds me a lot. I don't know why, but a lot of I drank tea in Peru constantly, and I have no idea why it would taste so similar to some of the teas that I had there.
Like a yerba mate kind of style, or like an actual like Camellia sinensis tea in Peru.
Like an actual like tea in Peru, yeah, like Camellia sinensis. Well, the teas that I drank were, yeah, regular Camellia sinensis and kind of whatever was at the places we were at. But sometimes there was like a traditional tea I didn't know what it was really.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, it reminds me. I feel like I'm in Peru. It's very fascinating.
Well, you look like you're in Peru too. Yeah, right. Just very like awesome.
Sunshine.
Yeah, Doug Ward says he loves the ball cap when you're wearing the ball cap. I just want you to know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Blockstar Rockstar.
Mm-hmm.
I had to switch to sunglasses because I couldn't see. But now I can't see the screen unless I go like this.
There you go. You get to be ultra cool. I want flip up sunglasses for my.
Yeah.
This is I'm really enjoying the third steep. I did 100 grams again. I don't know if you can see the color very well from there, but that's for the audience. That's for you guys. And I'm getting something that looks very golden. It's getting really nice aromatics. Claudia, do you clean up your extraction using a fine filter, or do you just go with sort of like a Gaiwan lid kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm really lazy. I'm actually using Shibori Dashi, so we kind of have that groove thing that helps.
Okay.
But usually with a Gaiwan, I don't, because one is I have one less thing to clean, and I actually don't mind having a bit of floating.
Yeah.
I find that if you have like reasonably quality tea, it won't ruin your tea. It actually adds a little bit. Like you like Triana, like she has really flowing, floating, and it works.
Such an interesting opinion, and I agree with you so much. There's quite a lot of I think hate on for sediment in the teas. You know, like when you get really into like say a Phoenix Mountain Oolong, you know, like people be like, oh, there's sediment in the tea, it's not as high of a quality. It's like, but that's just sorting, right? Like if you just sorted it a little differently, I think it's way more important than whether or not there's a little bit of sediment in your brew is. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we need to be careful in how we store and how we move around the tea leaves so that there's less opportunity for excessive breakage to happen. That's definitely a problem. But if there's a little bit of sediment, it adds to the richness of it almost. It makes like a thicker texture, right? And I have, some of my customers are really into these, I don't know if you can see that, but you can't even see through it. It's so fine, right? And this.
Oh, see, mine's way too thick. I mean, way too many holes in mine.
No, but what we're saying is the opposite, Sherri Ann, is that having a coarser sieve is actually can be a benefit. You know, some teas.
I'm noticing the benefit personally. Like I'm steeping to heaven right now.
Nice. That's fantastic. Cool. Yeah, I believe this, Claudia, that there's a benefit to having a more sort of, I don't want to say that too clean is bad. Like I don't want to go the reverse way, but if I was to choose between having it being too clean or having a little bit of sediment, my personal preference is a little bit of sediment, especially if that's what's naturally happening from that tea and it isn't brought about via bad handling practices. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
Have you noticed the spiciness fade in the third steep?
It's getting, you know, oh, go ahead. Sorry, you were going to say something like that.
Because I didn't pick up the spiciness, but for me, it's actually the vegetable that's kind of dialed down a little bit. Maybe that's kind of that direction that we're going.
What kind of water are you using?
I'm just using filter water. Anybody using lake water or river, stream?
Mine is just like we use this system called Water Tiger, and it does it does like a triple filter, and then it does a remineralization at the end.
Clean? Oh, okay, that's good.
It's not. It was too clean when it was 3 filters, so we had them add a 4th filter that puts more minerals back into it after it's been cleaned. So And that makes a big difference. You know, we were having a lot of problems. We're in an old building, so if you just use the water that's here, there was a lot of problems with what we were extracting, and it's made a huge difference to have this filtration system in place. But I honestly I like it way better out of the clay cup than I do out of the glass. Yeah, that's really nice.
It's interesting how like different teaware will kind of change the taste. Like people sometimes they don't believe it, but if you actually taste it, especially do a side by side comparison, it's
Big
pretty
difference.
fascinating. Yeah.
Well, we were one of the JagaVision episodes we did was with Daniel over at the Chinese tea shop.
Oh, the Yixing teapot.
It was so great. Like I bought one of his Yixings. I gotta show it to you. Isn't that pretty?
Yes.
I love it.
Aw,
It's one of my favorite
so
teapots.
nice.
But he doesn't recommend it for like a tea where it's more about aromatics. He recommends it more for an earthier tea. So I figured it wasn't the right tea pot for today, right? Because
Oh no. And
you-
also you should just use it for one type of tea.
Right.
Like if you decided for pour,
Yeah.
or like even for pour, you need to decide whether it's the show pour or the shop pour.
yeah,
And
okay.
before.
Well,
Because
yeah.
it actually absorbs the taste.
It makes sense, right? And so that's kind of where we're at with it. We're using it for our ripe pu'ers right now. So
Ah, okay. I think I did another interesting experiment with water and tea where I went to this tea shop it was in Hong Kong's little hole with a tea shop, and then the owner actually brought out this ancient antique cup and just like no they look quite similar
Uh-huh.
and a new one, but then she just pour water in them, and then the antique one actually makes the water taste sweeter.
That's so
Which I find
interesting.
it so weird. I was like, did you not wash the cup or something? No. But it's just that maybe it's the mineral content.
Yeah, of the clay. You know,
Yeah.
we did an episode on water where we were talking about how it's calcium and I believe it was magnesium that if you have hard water, magnesium and calcium, if they're not there, it doesn't matter if it's hard or soft. It's the magnesium and calcium that helps draw out the flavor molecules that attach to the liquid and allow you to taste the flavor. And then you also need to have bicarbonate in there as a buffer so that it can increase or decrease the acidity. The lack of the buffer makes the water too acidic, and then it makes it so that it doesn't taste very good. But if you drink water from an area where, you know, it's glacier water and it's gone over a lot of bicarbonate on its way to your pipes, you can't actually filter out the bicarbonate. And so it will become too like bland. So a lot of people think it's hard water, but it's actually because there's too much bicarbonate. And the only way around that is you have to dilute it with distilled water. So if you dilute it with distilled water, then you can reduce the amount of bicarbonate. But what was interesting is that there seems to be a relationship between like the composition of your water, sure, but when your water hits a particular type of clay, it impacts it. So like, you know, and I think are interconnected. I think there's just a little bit of something that the clay, especially when it's not glazed, right? That seems to be really important. If it's glazed, then that's basically the same as glass. And glass and glazed pottery are very neutral way of trying a tea. But if you have like Yixing or like my teapots here that are not glazed on the inside, then that's going to definitely transform. You know, we say like, oh, this teapot is good for the tea, right? But maybe a more accurate way of talking about it is that this teapot transforms the water so that it is good for that tea. Do you know what I mean? So this teapot is great for the water and this tea connection here, but it might not be great for the tea and water connection there. Does that make sense? I find that so fascinating. I think it's really interesting. So it's interesting to try this tea that you sent me in glass because I feel like I'm getting a very neutral sort of
Clinical.
like, yeah, right? And I'm being able to taste it. Now, if I was to use a teapot, a clay teapot, do you think it should always be glazed for white teas, or do you have any recommendations for an ideal teapot for white tea?
I definitely think glaze probably works better with white because it's so much more delicate. If you use like a Yixing, for example, it will definitely soak up a lot of the aroma, fragrance of
Right.
it, which you won't be able to enjoy. And also because you're brewing at like three lower temperature, glass also works well too because it doesn't retain the heat as much, so it won't draw out that bitterness, that astringent. Because a lot of problem with white tea when people taste it and they didn't like it is they brew it at boiling water and then they
Right.
extract all. I'm sure maybe for your second, because we're using 90-degree water, it's actually quite high already for white tea. And because you extract it for your second infusion much longer, you already get that unpleasant
The astringency.
astringent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's the glass will definitely help so that it doesn't retain that heat as much.
That's an interesting thought. So you're not gonna, if you do over extract a bit, you're not gonna retain the tannin, and it's gonna be give you a little bit more
Mm.
flexibility in future extractions, so that you can kind of fix it or whatever. You know, people often ask, if I over extract the second infusion, can I make the third infusion taste good, or did I wreck the tea? And I would say it's kind of depends. If it depends on how badly you over extract it. If you went like a super long time, problematic. But if it's a short over extraction, you're probably gonna be fine for the next time. And sometimes just a little bit of dilution. I know that's kind of cheating, but a little bit of dilution is gonna make it taste good too, right? So it's just have a little bit of fun with it and stuff. White teas are I know I only asked if I could have you for an hour here, and we're kind of very quickly reaching that hour, Claudia. But I'm under the understanding that white teas are a very young genre. The green teas, crimson teas, dark teas are a very kind of ancient genre. How old is the white tea genre? May I ask how old is the farm that we're tasting the teas from?
Well, this farm with their third generation in Chinese history is definitely not super old.
Okay.
But you're right, like white tea but I always feel like white tea is almost like because it's so minimally produced or
Yeah.
processed, I should say. I think in the old time, like people should be making white tea, but they just don't know if that's white tea. It's just tea to them.
Right.
But if you have to look into when, I think it's I remember correctly, it's like using just the 17th or 18th century that
Yeah.
white tea is
It's kind of
appearing.
the younger brother, hey, or the younger sister.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also white tea was mainly it's people like for Chinese people like to drink green tea. Number one, like green tea is
Right.
it's and for in Yunnan, but
Mhm.
white tea is more for the medicinal and TCM, the traditional Chinese
Mm.
medicine way of using white tea, and also because that's also why people like to age white tea as well. Like for green tea, you have to drink it fresh, but for white tea, you can actually age it. And
There's an
they're saying
interesting.
that, yeah,
Mm.
they're saying that after like 7 years, the white tea will become medicine. And you
That's
do
Wow.
get that little bit of the herbal, like after you age it, you get that little herbal
So
taste.
I've heard from people that at 8 months old you lose the umami in your white tea and you need to not drink it anymore. So you're saying another piece of information that's wonderful to hear. Like there's this I don't know if you've ever seen this book. This is Joseph Wesley Uhl. It's called The Art and Craft of Tea. And there's a section in here when he's talking about green teas that, it's really fascinating when it talks about, finish firing. And it's where I learned about the Maillard reaction and the toasting of sugars inside of teas. But one thing that he talks about is that he thinks green teas, you have to basically compost them after they're 8 months old. He doesn't come out and say that you have to compost them, but it's kind of the implication. He's basically saying at 8 months, green tea is done, and by association, and don't quote me as on this. I believe what I remember from this book is that white teas were implicated as well. So white teas can be aged. Are you going to lose the umami? Is that like what
It
happened?
definitely will mellow down. But white tea started with not as umami-ish as green tea, so it's not as distinct. It's like, oh
Mhm.
my god, this is not white tea anymore. And also, I sometimes I find that like new white tea has that vegetal, that grassiness,
Mhm.
and as you age it, that kind of dial down, and then you kind of develop more, like I said, like a little bit of herbal taste, which is quite interesting. Like it feels very different,
That's
and
cool.
it kind of quite comforting when drinking aged white tea. So maybe that's something you should try to
I wonder how to market that. I always put the year on my teas. I saw you do that too. That's great. A lot of people in the industry, it's kind of a scary thing to do because if your tea gets old, you are accountable to that, right? So now we're in 2021 and harvest season for white teas in many cases already happened, and you're in a situation where your tea is over a year old. Do you feel good about selling it? And in this situation, it sounds like yes, you can be like. How do you? I wonder how I should change my packaging. Hey, like should it just be like aged white tea 2020?
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, you definitely. I think white tea, you at least 3 years if you want to sell it. To
As
just
aged?
store it away and then bring it back.
And then bring it back.
After
That's the
3 years and say this is aged. So in China, they actually like how this white tea craze started to develop is this marketing line or I think that they said it's like 3 years it becomes like treasure.
Mhm.
7 years oh no, 3 years become medicine. 7 years it become treasure. So people, oh my god, I need to get hold of all these aged white tea. So yeah, there's definitely a market for it.
for it. Yeah, I always think like Daniel over at the Chinese tea shop sure choose the correct genre to kind of specialize in, you know, because it just keeps gaining in value. And then look at me, I do matcha. My it's like the opposite extreme, right? It's all about how close is it to the mill date because I'm dealing with a powdered tea, so it's all about like I tell people 3 weeks after you open it and you're done, right? And it's about maybe 6 to 9 months from the mill date, but that's kind of pushing it. You know, it's actually probably more realistic to say that at 3 months from the mill date, you start to taste a disintegration of the umami. And matcha, a huge part of its enjoyment is very much. Now, the nice thing is that we do bring in tencha, and tencha we keep in deep freeze. And as long as we deep freeze it, and that's what they do at Origin too, then I can always thaw it and then I can mill it. So I have a little bit more control because I'm milling it here. But if
I missed that part at the tea festival. I wanted to go to your booth at the Vancouver Tea Festival.
Oh yeah,
Milling.
There's the milling. Yeah, we did a whole me and Pedro, O5 Tea. He brought in a mill, and so did we. And so we both have a mill, and we're milling our own tea. So it's been pretty exciting. But anyway, I was just thinking like that's cool with the white teas, and I love your system here. And we've hit 2:15. So I just wanted if you wanted to maybe tell our viewers where they can find you, Claudia. Like where if they wanted to get some teas, if they want to get I guess it's not a subscription, but if they want to join your mailing list and know when your next kit is available, for those where can they find you? And maybe if you had some final words for us on this beautiful tea that you've shared with us, and etc.
Yeah, well, you can definitely find us on our website, teakan.co.
Okay.
And we're actually most active on Instagram as well. You'll see a lot of the behind the scene, and because we do, like I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of private tasting with people who got our kit, and we will do the recap. So even if you missed the tasting, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about what the tasting would be like. But yeah, definitely follow us on Instagram, which is also tcan.co.
Okay.
And yeah, we love to talk all things tea. And so I'm really excited to be here drinking, sharing this tea with you.
Awesome. Okay. Very, very cool. We'll encourage everybody to go check you out. So, Sherri Ann, did you have some words for Claudia here or about this tea? And if you could also tell our viewers where they can find your music?
Yes, I really enjoyed the third steep. It was a little bit more floral.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Spot on. Because I feel like the first, for me, it's always the second and third that tastes the best. The first, you kind of get a little bit of what the tea is about, but it's not totally open yet. And also, if you have time to look at because now the tea leaves is quite open.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost see like I love that. That's why I love loose leaf tea. You can almost see the leaf coming back to life, so that it's
Yeah, totally. There's like a saturation that happens, and it tasted really good cold. By the way, mine got cold, and it's so lovely cold. I think this is gonna be exciting for summer to brew that in cold water, and yeah, super exciting.
You should definitely try to cold brew this like span leaf as well. It
Yeah.
still have a lot of flavor in it.
I'm gonna keep going with this. I'll drink this after the show's over for sure. Sister Speak, you can find her music at patreon.com/sisterspeak if you want to pitch in and support her shows that she does every Thursday. Sisterspeakmusic.com. You got some very COVID careful appearances here and there. I know you'll be you'll be joining my music project at the end of this month here in Nootka Court, which will be exciting. So I'm really happy for that. And Sister Speak will be performing, but you're also lovely enough to play guitar for my band Truth and Dolphin. And excited to do the tea and music. We should actually say very carefully tea and desserts with background music on that final Friday. And we all got to be really careful out there. It's a really trying time. But sorry, Sherri, did you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
Oh, Claudia, I hope that we can all get together and have tea when it's safe to do so again, and all hang out. That'd be really fun.
Yeah, definitely, and I do hope to enjoy your music as well.
Yeah,
tea and music are the best.
they really are. And those watching can also go on. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
That's okay. There's a little delay, so don't worry. Thank you both so much.
Awesome. Okay. And you can go onto the jagasilk.com and you can click on the live music section. And you can actually sign up for a Google Meet link so that you can get a live feed of the music. We send you a little bit of tea with instructions on how to make it and a dessert. So you can have tea and dessert from the comfort of your own home, listening to the live background music and enjoy. This is the final Friday of every month. You can also come down if you're in Victoria, and we have very carefully distanced seating outside in the courtyard, and you can enjoy your tea out there every Friday, actually. And it's the final Friday where the background music becomes live background music. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Thank you, Claudia, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here. Beautiful tea. Really excited to have had it and had this conversation. Thank you so much. And
Have a nice day.
And Sister Speak as well every week. Super appreciative. Okay.
Thank
Bye, guys.
Thank you both.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that was the wonderful Sister Speak, and we also had Claudia from TCAN, and I encourage you to check them all out if you want to see future episodes. Next week we're going to have Sarjessa joining us, Alexandria. She's got a really interesting project that she does up over in Alberta. We'll be drinking the Genmaicha by Hayashi. It's a Zairaishu, so it's an heirloom cultivar. That's one of our fast bar green teas. So I hope you can participate next week if you're watching. If you are watching the archive version of this show, click subscribe. Even if it's live, click subscribe. If you sign up for notifications, then when we do go live, you should get an email letting you know that we are live. So appreciate you watching. Stay safe out there. It's a really frightening and careful time that we need to all sort of engage in together. And I hope you, stay safe. See you next week.